Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kimberly Lamott, and I am the Southern Area Chair of the National Trends and Facet National Trends and Services facet for the Southern area of the Links Incorporated. Welcome to See Them, See Us, Human Trafficking in Plain Sight. We have a very full agenda for tonight's town hall. We will have opening remarks from Mrs. Vanessa Falls, who is the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated. Madam Area.
Good evening and welcome. I am Vanessa Falls, the Southern Area Director of the Links Incorporated. On behalf of the more than 5,000 women of the 83 chapters of the Southern Area of Links Incorporated, I'm honored to greet you as we gather for this critical and timely conversation on human trafficking. Human trafficking is often called a hidden crisis, but for far too many young people, especially women and girls of color, it is an everyday reality. As we enter HBCU homecoming season, this discussion becomes even more urgent. We know that traffickers deliberately target large gatherings, parties, and celebrations, putting our students and communities at heightened risk. That is why tonight's dialogue matters so much. Awareness can save lives. This evening, we're privileged to learn from an extraordinary panel of nationally recognized leaders who bring deep expertise and lived experience to this dialogue. Ms. Kemba Smith Pradia, whose powerful story of strength, resilience, and advocacy has inspired a national movement for awareness, justice, and reform. Dr. Stephany Powell, a member of the Links Incorporated from the Western area, is a leading voice in the fight against exploitation, who has worked tirelessly to educate and empower communities. And award-winning filmmaker Christine Swanson, who uses the power of storytelling to reveal truth, create empathy, and inspire action. Together, their voices will help us understand the complex reality of trafficking and what we can do to respond with compassion, awareness, and action. Thank you for joining us in this important conversation. Now, let us begin. I will now turn the virtual stage over to Dr. Juno Jacobs. Dr. Jacobs.
Good evening. We would like to thank the Southern Area Director, Mrs. Vanessa Falls, for her greeting and opening remarks. I am Juno Jacobs, the Southern Area Links Love HBCU's chair and a proud member of the LaFleur's Bluff, Mississippi chapter. As our Southern Area Director emphasized, human trafficking is a hidden crisis affecting college students, especially those at HBCUs. The risks are heightened during homecoming season, when traffickers often target young people at social events, parties, and large gatherings using deceptive tactics. According to National Black Women's Justice Institute, although African Americans make up 13.6% of the U.S. population, Black women account for 40% of sex trafficking victims, the highest percentage of any race. Because of the alarming stats surrounding sex trafficking, a national trends and services facet, the arts facet, and our national signature program, Links Love HBCUs, are working to combat human trafficking in the southern area of the Links Incorporated. And it's especially critical in the region, as the South is the home of the highest concentration of HBCUs in the country. The work will be a call to action to educate HBCU students, administrators, and the communities in which we serve. And next, we will have Dr. Kimberly Lamont to introduce one of our very special guests.
Thank you so very much for that, Dr. Jacobs. It is my honor to introduce our first speaker. She is my counterpart in the Western area, Dr. Stephany Powell. She has had a 30-year career with the LAPD as a sergeant in charge of a vice unit. She has educated more than 21,000 law enforcement, first responders, community leaders, school administrators, and many others across the country and internationally. Dr. Powell is an adjunct assistant professor of behavioral science at Los Angeles Trade Technical College, as well as an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California. Dr. Powell has had most recently, she has been highlighted in the PBS documentary And Still I Rise by Dr. Henry Louis Gates and has been featured on HLN Chris Como for her expertise in human trafficking. She has authored a human trafficking workbook for teens titled My Choice, My Body, My Rules, which is available on Amazon and currently being used on both national and international levels. She is a contributing author for the textbook Teaching Beautiful, Brilliant Black Girls Girl Trafficking Misunderstood, Understanding the Commercially Sexually Exploited African American Girl, which is available through Corwin Press and Amazon. Dr. Powell is a powerful speaker and a recognized expert on human trafficking in all its forms. Dr. Powell, you have the floor.
Thank you so very much for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. First, I would really like to thank the Southern area for putting on this informative webinar. It's fabulous. It's a thing that we really need in terms of getting out the information. When we think of human sex trafficking, we often think of people being taken off the street by that person in the white van with no windows. We often think that it's only minors. But who it really is, it could be anybody's daughter or son, because it happens to boys as well. About only 1% of human trafficking victims are actually kidnapped. So that becomes the thing that we really need to understand. 9 times out of 10, the person knows their trafficker. So to give you a basic definition on sex trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to make a person engage in commercial sex. For minors under the age of 18, any commercial sex act is considered to be sex trafficking, and you don't need the element of the force, fraud, or coercion. When we talk about these things, the force and the fraud, we can understand that, we see it. Sometimes what we miss is that coercion piece, because people will say, well, why did they decide to do it? Well, there's a grooming process that is involved, and you will see that in Kemba's story. To give you some other stats, African American girls and women, and it was said earlier, make up 40% of victims of human trafficking. African American girls, 40%. So this is a problem that we really need to have those discussions in our community. Now, there was a study that was done in San Diego of college girls, because a lot of times, because we think that it's only minors, we don't think about the girls that are in college, but they are at risk as well. So just to give you some statistics of a study that was done in 2023 of 500 participants. And so of that 500, more than 1 in 5 had exchanged sex for something of monetary value. And so that, in its description, monetary value, or it doesn't even always have to be a monetary value, something that is deemed of in value. So it could be food, it could be a gift. It doesn't always have to be money. But 1 in 5 said that they had engaged in that type of activity. But here's the kicker. 19% said that they would consider it if they were approached. 19% said they would consider it if they were to be approached. 26% stated that they were trafficked through force, fraud, or coercion. But here where it goes for our Black students. Black students were 2 times more likely than others to be forced into selling their bodies commercially. So as you can see, it's an issue that we cannot pretend like it's not happening. And we really need to be standing on the rooftops and talking about it. So although Kemba was not sex trafficked, what you're going to see is the similarities in the grooming process and the coercion process as it pertains to sex trafficking. And so with that, I would like to play a video showing my friend, Rachel Thomas, who was sex trafficked out of Emory University.
Rachel Thomas. I'm from Pasadena. Any Dina? Hey, always in the house. We got a whole table back there. I'm gonna make my way over there. And I'm from a wonderful upper middle class 2-parent home. My mother's a lawyer, my dad's a church deacon. She went to UCLA, he went to USC, so they call it a mixed marriage. And I never experienced any form of abuse in my home. My parents have been married for over 30 years, and I've never even seen them have an argument in front of me. So compared to many of the stories we've heard tonight, I had a perfect childhood almost, all-American dream. I went to high school, and I played volleyball, and I ran track, and I was voted prom queen, and I worked really hard, and I got into the university of my choice, which was Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was there in my junior year. I had just turned 20 years old when I met a man. And I was at a popular hangout college lounge with my friends, and he came up to me on the dance floor, and he said, "You are gorgeous. Has anyone ever told you you should be a model?" And so I'm like, hey, well, I was flattered, but I had heard it before from a guy representing John Robert Powers, and I decided not to go that route. And I was in school to be a teacher, and I was almost a senior, so I said thanks, but no thanks. And fast forwarding a little bit, he ended up convincing me that night, because he then had another model come and approach me on the dance floor again and reiterate how beautiful I was and how she worked with this guy named Mike, and he's the best in the city and that he can jumpstart my career. So I gave him a try. The very next weekend, we did the first photo shoot. By week 2, he had gotten me a paid modeling gig and asked me to fill out a W-9. On the W-9, which I had filled out before because I worked at the Y in high school, I put on there my full name, my permanent address, which is my parents' home address in Pasadena, my current address where I was living in Atlanta with my best friend and roommate, my social security number, and a slew of other information. And I handed Mike the W-9, assuming he would hand it to the casting director and I'd receive a check in the mail. By the third week, Mike called again with an exciting opportunity to audition for a major magazine in New York. And he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, of course I want to go, I'm ready. And he said, okay, good. Do you have about $400 for the flight and hotel? I'm like, no, I don't have $400 lying around. I'm a broke college student, but my parents are kind of rich. Let me call them. But before I can get off the phone, he said, no, actually, you know what? By the time you have the taxis to and from the audition place and you get your hair and your makeup done, and this is a big audition, so you probably want to buy a new outfit, it's probably going to be more like $750, $800. You think your parents will give you that? I knew they weren't going to give me $750 or $800 to go on some New York weekend audition. And so I sounded pretty disappointed. And he said, well, you know what? That's okay, because you can do what some of my other models do, which is become an exotic dancer.
So when he asked her to become the exotic dancer, of course, it was not something that she actually wanted to do, but he was able to talk her into it. And as a result, by week 5, that is when the beatings began, and then that's when she was forced into commercial sex. He sold her on video sets, he sold her, as well as others, because he had others that he was selling as well, and as well as inside the strip clubs. So the interesting part about that, especially for some of us that are older, when we think of strip clubs, we think there's like no way. But for the younger group, and I'm talking about girls as well, it's not unusual for them to actually go into strip clubs. Oftentimes you'll hear people say that they have the best wings. So it wasn't too far of a throw for her to have been in there. But when she said, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be in the strip clubs, I do not want to be a part of commercial sex, that's when the beating started. This was a 6-week process. And as you would imagine, she didn't call and tell her parents what was going on, because that's a really hard phone call to make. What she did end up doing is just telling her parents that she needed to come home. Now, she was getting ready to go into her senior year. And it was from there that she did testify against him. He ended up going to prison. The good news is that what she does now in the Los Angeles area is that she has a curriculum, an intervention curriculum for victims of trafficking. And she is a big advocate legislatively, also as it pertains to trafficking as well. Aside from the beatings, what he also did, because remember, she said that she filled out a W-9, he had all of her contact information and he weaponized that. So he also told her that if she didn't do what he wanted her to do, then he was going to have her parents killed. So as a result of that, she did all of those things. So remember, we're also talking about a college student who 9 times out of 10 probably has not had a job before. So all she knows is that she thinks that this person is legitimate. And that is what becomes the hard part about that. And maybe for some, it's a hard thing for us to understand. One thing about victims of human trafficking, while they are in it, they do not self-identify. They don't self-identify because they also feel that they are the cause of what has happened to them. So there's a lot of embarrassment. And so that's where the grooming and the coerciveness comes into play, where now the person thinks that it's all them. They're the bad person. And again, that embarrassment that comes with it. So people will sometimes say, well, who are the traffickers? Because I know most of you probably aren't as old as I am. I always tell people that I am Harriet Tubman's classmate. But back in the day, especially in the 70s, we would see that the traffickers slash pimps, they're one and the same. They would have on the green suits and the flashy cars and the canes. Well, here's the thing. Although you might still have some of them that look like them, the majority of them are the same age as their victims. So they will pose as boyfriends, they will pose as love interests, they will pose as friends. And so because of that, it really makes it very easy for traffickers to be able to talk their victims into doing these things. A trafficker or pimp once said, if he cannot find a weakness, he will create one. And so he will use that weakness as part of that grooming process. Her story, unfortunately, is not an anomaly. I have worked several years with victims of human trafficking, and I have heard these same stories. I've heard these same stories not only from college students, but of course, I've heard them from teenagers as well. So people will also ask, well, how does it happen that someone can even get in contact enough to be able to have these conversations? Well, how many of our kids are online? How many of our kids are on gaming systems and you ask them, who are they talking to? And they say, my friend. How many people will talk to somebody online, trusting them, that false sense of security, and end up telling them everything about them? It happens quite often. So here are some of the social and environmental risks as it pertains to college students. Think about this for one moment. Our college students, 9 times out of 10, we have shielded them so much that they don't even know. They're so naive in terms of navigating the world, and then we send them off to school. And now they have that newfound independence, as well as, in some cases, social isolation. So think about when we all went to school and we couldn't wait to get out of the house, right? And so that newfound independence, unfortunately, can put, and I'm talking about girls right now because statistically, you find more girls. However, back to the boys real quick. It's not that boys don't become victims of human trafficking. They do. We just don't know the exact amount. I've heard anywhere from 1% to 30%. So because of social stigma that's sometimes associated with it, boys don't report. So and when we talk about the girls, that newfound social independence, that can become a risk factor. Their online presence. How many times have you been with, your daughter, granddaughter? They're on their phone, they're taking selfies, and then they go back to see how many likes they got, because that is so incredibly important. So, them being online, fake job opportunities. How often, we're broke college students. So if someone's going to offer you a job where you don't have to ask mom and dad for money anymore, 9 times out of 10, they're going to take it. So there are those fake job opportunities. Again, online dating and the sugaring. So let me tell you about sugaring. Sugarbabies.com. Interesting enough, I had an HBCU student that was an intern with me. And so, and when I was at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, so we were having this conversation about sugaring. And like I said, she was an HBCU student. She said that for sugar daddies, sugarbabies.com, normally the men who are on this site, because they're looking for young girls, and usually these are men that have a lot of money, they have to pay. The sugar babies, they usually have to pay as well. But if you had an EDU email address, you could go on for free. Guess who they targeted? The HBCUs. Why? Think about it. African American girls, African American women. Unfortunately, that myth of us being oversexed. So here we go again, where that becomes the target. What they also are selling on Sugar Babies and SugarDaddy.com, they will say this is not a prostitution site. Well, first of all, for you to have to say it, should kind of make you side-eye. But what they tell them is that they have the opportunity to go out on dates with rich men, that there's no sex involved. Well, we know that at some point it does. So social media targeting as well. Traffickers will monitor social media. They may tell the person nice pic, and then because we teach our girls to be polite, what do they say? Thank you. And once they say thank you, then what that does is now it opens up a conversation. So as you could see, our girls, our boys, they are at risk for exploitation, hence trafficking. So these are some of the things that make them at risk. Oftentimes we think that it's just the foster youth, or that it's those girls that are considered the bad girls that get in trouble. This really is anybody's daughter. And so, as I said before, everything that you guys learn here today, please pass it on to your communities. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to hear about it. But guess what? While we are not telling our daughters of what are some of the risks, while we're not telling them, guess who is talking to them? That potential trafficker. So thank you so very much. I really hope that this gives you some insight. I know we are all excited to hear from Kemba. And as you are hearing from her again, please listen to her story, because her story is much like Rachel's story, and all of their story, unfortunately, is not unusual, not only for our college students, but for our high school students as well. The average age of human sex trafficking victims, the average entry age, is between the ages of 12 and 14 years old. We need to be the message for our community. Thank you so very much.
Dr. Powell, thank you for that dynamic and insightful presentation. I'm Ebony Lumumba, Southern Area Services to Youth Chair and member of the Jackson, Mississippi chapter. And before we dive into our next segment on human trafficking and the role that each of us can play in prevention, I'd like for us to pause for a moment for a quick knowledge check. We'll go through a few myth and truth statements about human trafficking, and we're going to ask you all to activate the chat. Type true or false as we go through each statement, and let's see what we know and what we can learn about this critical issue. True or false? Traffickers target victims they don't know. We're going to ask you all participants to go to the chat with your knowledge and weigh in on whether you think this is a true statement or a myth. Thank you for everyone that's chiming in. Next slide, please. The truth is that's false, that many survivors, as Dr. Powell shared with us, are trafficked by people that they know, romantic partners, spouses even, family members, which includes parents.
Okay, our next myth. Human trafficking involves more than sex trafficking. Is that true or false?
Some great responses coming into the
Yes,
chat.
that is true. Human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, coercion to get another person to provide labor or commercial sex. Worldwide experts believe there are more than situations of labor trafficking than of sex trafficking, but there is much wider awareness of sex trafficking in the US than of labor trafficking.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Next statement. True or false? People being trafficked are physically unable to leave their situations. They're either locked in or held against their will. Is this a necessary dynamic to consider someone a victim of trafficking? I want to thank you all for this activity in the chat, because this prevention and this advocacy will take all of us. Next slide. The fact is that that is false. There are cases where there may be individuals who are being held against their will, but there are also reasons such as lack of basic necessities like transportation or a safe place to go for housing if they do leave their situation. Some are afraid for their safety, and some have been so effectively manipulated that they don't even realize or identify themselves as victims of trafficking or being under someone else's control.
Okay, and now we have our last true or false. Only women and girls can be victims and survivors of sex trafficking.
And I think Dr. Powell clued us in
Yes, I
on the
see some
response.
different answers.
We want to check our knowledge.
This is a pop test. Okay, false. Anyone can be victimized by sex traffickers.
We want to thank you all for activating the chat, getting active. If you have never advocated against human trafficking with action, this is your first action tonight. Dropping your responses in the chat. We want to direct you to this QR code where you can visit the Polaris site for more myth statements and truths about human trafficking, because the more educated we are on this issue, the better advocates we are at preventing it. So please scan the code and share something you learned tonight with someone else. I'm going to pass the virtual mic back to Kimberly Lamont.
Whew, I tell you, thank you all so very much for that. There is so much to learn about this topic. Every time I speak to Dr. Powell, every time I go online, it seems as if I'm learning something new. Along with that education, I would like to encourage everyone to consider, to consider some official training that is free and available to everyone. We mentioned Polaris. Polaris is the organization that runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Well, they offer a Human Trafficking 101, very short, simple, video-based training course that includes 6 short modules that really can be covered in about 45 minutes. I have completed that training. It is free and available on their website. It includes some survivor stories, case studies, and just some simple, reports of this issue happening in the community. Really debunks a lot of myths. So, and at the end of the training, they issue a certificate of completion that you can have for your records. We really urge everyone to consider this free opportunity to learn more valuable information on the signs and impacts of human trafficking. Now, you were just shown a QR code, and you will get some additional resources at the end of this town hall that will cover everything that we have presented. Additionally, we'd like for you to consider visiting the Southern Area's website, because we will also have the resources listed there. Again, the QR code will be shown at the end, but the web address for the Southern Area is salinksinc.org. So we encourage everyone to please visit us there as well for all of the resources. Well, I did tell you that we had a full agenda. Next, we will hear from our Southern Area Facet Chair for the Arts Facet, Ms. Arlene Farabee. She will bring us a perspective from the arts. Ms. Farabee?
Thank you, Dr. Lamont, and good evening, everyone. Before you hear from Kemba Smith Pradia herself and have a chance to watch the trailer for the film Kemba about her personal trafficking story, I want to take a moment to highlight an important part of our arts programming in the Southern Area. Since 2023, our Lights, Camera, Action, Our Story, Our Lens film initiative has intentionally focused on elevating stories that are meaningful to our communities. One of our valued artistic partners in this space is acclaimed filmmaker, screenwriter, and producer Christine Swanson, who wrote the movie Kemba. Because we hold a deep belief in the transformative power of storytelling, we invited Christine to share what inspired her to write the film. And here's what she had to say in this special video message.
Hello, I am writer, director, and filmmaker Christine Swanson. I am going to speak to you about the power of storytelling. I was the writer of Kemba, which was a story about Kemba Smith. Why are these stories so important to tell? I got involved with Kemba's story because I was very much interested in highlighting the problems in the legal system that disproportionately sends Black and brown people, in this case, children, to prison. So in telling this story, we were able to highlight why those laws were unfair and how they came to be and how they affected a family like Kemba's. So I believe telling stories like these are powerful advocacy tools to show what's happened in the past and how moving forward that what can be done with advocacy work, powerful storytelling, advocacy work, and always highlighting injustices through storytelling is something that I want to see more of. And the Kemba Smith story is an example of what can happen when these stories are done in this way.
We thank Christine for taking time to share that with us. Recognizing the power of film to break down barriers and ignite important conversations around difficult topics, we invite everyone in tonight's virtual space to watch the movie Kemba. Even if you've seen the movie, which originally premiered in 2024, we encourage you to watch it again with renewed perspective. It's currently available to stream on BET+. To deepen the impact, we actually encourage you to get together with others and host a viewing party during HBCU month. We believe that watching Kemba as a group can create a shared experience that inspires meaningful dialogue. In our Links community, we call these post-viewing discussions talkbacks. And to support your conversations, we've created the Kemba Talkback Guide, a resource designed to help you facilitate thoughtful and productive discussions about trafficking after you've watched the movie. You can download the guide by scanning the QR code you see on the screen, and we're also going to drop a link in the chat. The guide includes a framework and questions to facilitate your conversation following the film. So thank you for joining us in building a community rooted in awareness, advocacy, and accountability around the issue of trafficking. Dr. Lumumba, back to you.
Thank you, Arlene. Our next guest presenter, Kemba Smith Pradia, is a nationally recognized criminal justice reform advocate and survivor of domestic violence whose powerful story became a catalyst for national awareness around mass incarceration and the war on drugs. After being sentenced to 24 and a half years in prison for a nonviolent drug offense connected to her abusive partner, she served 6.5 years of that sentence before receiving executive clemency from President Bill Clinton in 2000. Earlier this year, nearly 25 years after her release, she was granted a full pardon by President Joe Biden. Kemba is the author of Poster Child, The Kemba Smith Story, executive producer of the award-winning film Kemba, now streaming on BET+, and a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Before Ms. Pradia joins us live, we will begin with a short Legal Defense Fund video highlighting her dynamic and transformative work, as well as a video message from her.
LDF was already on this, but it wasn't in a time where criminal justice was the thing. I didn't feel like I could go to my parents. I didn't feel like I could go to authorities, especially after he killed his best friend. I was his girlfriend. I wasn't knowledgeable of his business dealings. I was no threat to public safety. Being pregnant while incarcerated and not being able to physically touch, hold, smell, feel him after I gave birth to him It's something, a trauma that is kind of indescribable.
This issue transcends poverty. You know, it transcends orders and community. You can be middle class as you want to be. Home paid for, 10 bedrooms or whatever. And have your child be in the same position Kemba was in. We know that there are serious issues here, but we also know we can make a difference.
The perfect plaintiff can help us see race more clearly, because it shows that even when you have the perfect life, when you have the two-parent household, when you have the middle-class upbringing, the economic wherewithal, you can still wind up in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system.
Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to have been invited to speak for this webinar today. Special thank you to Kim for the invitation, and I cannot be on this webinar with the Southern Area region of the Links Incorporated without mentioning my soror and sister, Ethel Isaac Williams. Thank you so very much for your continued support as well. But tonight, I could be on my soapbox talking about criminal justice reform and mass incarceration and felony disenfranchisement and a wealth of other topics that I typically speak on. But tonight I've been invited to speak on human trafficking, and I think my story kind of intertwines with human trafficking. And so I'm just going to begin with a question. When you think of human trafficking, what image comes to your mind? Maybe you picture a movie scene, someone locked away, or strangers abducted off the street. But trafficking doesn't always look like that. Often it looks like someone you know, someone sitting in your classroom, someone in your friend group, or someone like me. This webinar tonight is entitled See Them, See Us, because the people caught up in trafficking are not faceless strangers. They are us, our classmates, our friends, our neighbors, and sometimes they don't even realize they're being pulled into it until it's too late. Now, with my story, when I was in college, I started dating a guy who sold drugs. And at first I told myself it was just his hustle, his thing, not mine. And I thought, you know, because I was a college student, I was separate from it. But what I didn't realize is how quickly I would become entangled in his world and how easy it was for my loyalty and relationship to be used against me. And so, you know, I can remember in this relationship, obviously, you know, I can't share my whole story, and we'll be showing the movie trailer to my film right after my presentation. But understand that my relationship initially started out where he was Mr. Knight in Shining Armor. I knew that there were other girls that dated him on campus. I would see him pick up other girls, you know, in different cars. And I honestly kind of looked up to some of the girls and, you know, felt insecure about myself because I thought, you know, some of these girls were prettier than I was. They were in sororities. So, you know, I kind of looked at, you know, him picking them up and kind of wishing that that could be me, not realizing that the grass isn't greener on the other side. But fast forward through the relationship, you know, I can remember one time, and again, I would have never thought that I would have had this story to tell, but I can remember walking through an airport with wads of money strapped around my waist and shaking the whole time. because, I convinced myself by listening to him that, I would be fine, even though I was scared to death. And even in him telling me that that was something that he wanted me to do, I was too fearful, because by this time the abuse had started, but I was too fearful to tell him no, I didn't want to do it. But I can also remember another time I put a car in my name that wasn't even mine. We were at a car dealership, and he was looking at a Jeep that he was interested in getting, and then when it came time to wheel and deal at the dealership, he slid the paperwork over to me and was just like, well, we can just put the car in your name. And I can remember signing the paperwork, but not knowing that that's not why I had come with him to the dealership. I had no idea that I would eventually be asked to, put my name in on the vehicle. So on the surface, these look like small favors for someone I cared about. But the truth, I was being groomed into taking risk for his business, risks that could have destroyed my future and almost did. And here's the thing. It didn't feel like trafficking at the time. Nobody kidnapped me. Nobody locked me in a room. I walked into it through choices that seemed small, but those choices were built on manipulation, pressure, and my desire to please someone who didn't have my best interests at heart. And so with human trafficking, it doesn't always begin with a van and a stranger. Sometimes it starts with a boyfriend, a friend, an opportunity that seems exciting, glamorous, or just convenient. And I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't have social media, but I can remember I spoke along with a young lady years ago, and basically she was in high school at the time, and she met this guy online, and eventually she ended up meeting him because he knew how to lure her, which was football. And she was rooting for a particular team that was her favorite team, and he basically just suggested them meeting and them watching this football game together at a hotel room. And eventually she met him at this hotel room, and by the time she walked in, he closed the door, had a gun laying on the table, and eventually there was this ongoing where she would meet him, and eventually she was being trafficked. And this young lady came from a good home. Her mom was a lawyer. Her mom didn't have any clue as far as what was going on, but eventually one day her mom did see her cell phone messages and found out what had happened and what was going on, because eventually it became a point where this person was actually drugging her and having other men come to have sex with her. But long story short, I was very surprised at the end of this young lady's story to find out that the guy that was actually trafficking her was a law enforcement officer. So eventually, this person did have to go to court and face charges, but I'm just sharing this with you because oftentimes, you can be vulnerable and, seek out these attention, these things where you're seeking attention and get caught up in a situation that you never would think that you would be in, that's revolved around human trafficking. So let me make this real for you. Imagine being asked to drive a car to Miami for spring break. It sounds fun, right? But what if drugs are hidden inside and you don't know it? If you're caught, you, not the person who handed you the keys, are the one facing prison time. Let's say again, imagine someone asking you to put a phone bill or a car in your name. That favor could connect your identity to illegal activity. Imagine being told Just carry this for me. You'll be fine. That's exactly how I ended up walking through an airport with thousands of dollars taped to me. Traffickers, whether in sex trafficking or in the drug culture or labor trafficking, rely on relationships, secrecy, and your silence. They count on the fact that you will be too embarrassed, too loyal, or too scared to speak up. You in college are at a stage of life where you crave independence, adventure, and belonging. And traffickers know that. They look for people who want to prove themselves, who are chasing quick money, and who feel unseen. College towns are hot spots for recruitment because of nightlife, social media, and travel opportunities. Young adults are especially targeted because you often don't realize how much is at stake until it's too late. And here's the hard truth. It only takes one bad decision, one bad trip, one bad relationship to alter your entire life, or worst case scenario, even end it. The call to action tonight is, how do we protect ourselves and each other? Number one, pay attention to your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Number two, ask questions. Why are they asking you to carry money, to drive the car, to sign your name? Number three, protect your future. No relationship, no amount of money. Wait, let me back up. No relationship, I don't care how fine they are, how good they make you feel. No relationship, no amount of money, no party is worth losing your freedom. And lastly, look out for one another. If you see a friend slipping into something risky, don't stay silent. Step in and speak up. When you see them, the people who are targeted, pressured, or exploited, see us, because it could be any one of us if we aren't careful. And so in closing, I stand here today not as someone who got it all right, but as someone who lived the reality of how fast things can spiral out of control. I've chosen to share my experience by writing a book and now through a film about this part of my life that's currently streaming on BET Plus called Kemba, so that young people like you can learn from it, recognize the warning signs, and avoid the traps I fell into. So I leave you with this. See them, see us. When you see the stories of trafficking victims, don't think of them as other. Think of them as a mirror. Protect yourself, protect your friends, and never underestimate how one decision can change everything. Thank you.
Taking you back to the beginning, before all this happened.
I wasn't even allowed to date until I was 18.
Come on, Kemba.
I don't fit in. By the time I got to Hampton, I couldn't wait to break free. I met Khalif. The world stopped.
So beautiful.
Hey, Kemba, you should start thinking about picking a major.
You should listen to your father, Kemba. I love you, Kemba.
I love you too.
It's nothing.
Kemba,
Dad, what are you doing here?
there are bounty hunters calling our house, looking for Khalif.
They better not say nothing.
They wouldn't do anything like that.
You know what they would do. You don't understand. I know where they live, Kemba.
We don't want you. We want Khalif.
I don't know where he is.
If you cooperate, we can help you out.
You should listen to him.
I never dealt any drugs, but this says I did.
If you sign the plea deal, at most you'll serve 24 months.
By mandatory sentencing guideline, The defendant is to be committed for a term of 294 months.
Kemba didn't handle, use, or sell any of the drugs. They treated the girlfriend like the kingpin.
I want my daughter out of there, and I want her home.
She got caught up in the war on drugs. They denied the appeal.
It's a fight they want, it's a fight they're gonna get. These ladies will help raise awareness of the case.
This is my story too. Keep your head up.
The president needs to release her now.
I don't want this to be the end of my story.
Wow. I can tell you that having seen the movie just within the past few weeks for the second time, it is exceptionally powerful. We are thankful to have Kemba with us this evening. We are having some, there we go. Thank God I can worry Jesus about something else. Okay, we have Kemba. Thank you so much for joining us, Kemba.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And I am so elated that you all chose this topic because, you know, what happened to me in the 90s is still happening in 2025. And so, you know, with this theme, see them, see us, I am forever grateful to LDF. That's why I had the LDF clip played. But, you know, spoiler alert for those of you all who may not have seen the film, but you would also find why. The Links Incorporated is very special and near and dear to my heart. So I really am grateful to be able to do this work with you all. The film did premiere actually February of 2025. No, I'm sorry, last year, as what was mentioned earlier. But what I would like to cue up is that with this theme, see them, see us, one of the reactions that I have had from various different communities is that women see themselves or young boys see their moms because their mom have been in, you know, a toxic relationship. And so I really hope to create platforms across the country where if anyone, any student, any administrator at universities would like to host a screening of the film and have a talk back, I just strongly urge, and if you guys could put up the slide with my contact information, but feel free to scan the QR code and you'll see it's a link tree, whether you want to reach out to me personally or if you want to schedule to host a screening on your campus. Also, there was an impact campaign that was launched along with the film because it wasn't just about me telling my story. There was a woman who I was friends with who was incarcerated, and I highlighted her story, but wanted governors and the President of the United States to acknowledge intimate partner violence and um, have clemency for other individuals like me. And so President Biden actually commuted her sentence as well, along with granting me a full pardon just before he went out of office. But if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to download the information. I look forward to hearing from you. And if you want to purchase my book as well, there it's on that link tree as well.
Well, again, thank you so very much. I want to make sure that the audience realizes, of course, you know, you are, like many of us, juggling many things. And we so appreciate your time coming because I know you had some other obligations that came up this evening. And we just really, really appreciate your input. I believe that you really nailed the connection between your story and connecting it to our programming about human trafficking and the analogies, the similarities, and the things that we can do in our communities. And this is for everyone, not just, you know, members of the Links Incorporated. You mentioned our sorority. It's not just members of our sorority, it's everyone. We are encouraging everyone here to share this information share Kimba's story, the assets that you have access to tonight. Please, we need to get this information out. And as we said, homecoming is critical. Yes, Kimba, you have something.
And just one last comment, and whether I'm there or not, and like you said, if it's hosted by the Links or not, what I find most impactful is that there are counselors, therapists that can be present, when the screening has happened or whenever you have this conversation within your communities. Because where a lot of young people fall vulnerable in these type situations is because of trauma that they've already experienced, or certain insecurities that they may have, or not understanding their own worth. So we need to make sure we have these conversations.
Absolutely. And we have, we know on tonight's audience, we have, of course, teachers, educators on all levels. And we're saying in advance of the HBCU homecoming season, but we know that this goes down into elementary, middle, high school as well. Everyone needs to be aware of the dangers that our children are facing, for sure. So we definitely want to encourage all of the educators, the community leaders that we have that have joined us tonight. We really need to get this information out into our communities as much as we can. We have had two powerful, impactful speakers tonight. They have shared their contact information. They want to be resources in our communities and all communities. They want to make sure that we can do all that we can to make sure that there aren't any more victims that are survivors of this, for sure. So again, thank you so very much to Kemba. You all don't know how many mountains we had to move. And our tech team, I have to thank our tech team tonight for sure, because we, none of this would have been possible without our tech team. I want to thank my co-hosts. We have had Ms. Farabee, Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Lumumba. We have heard from our area director, Mrs. Vanessa Falls, who is the director of the Southern area of the Links Incorporated. We absolutely urge everyone here to engage the youth groups that are within your circles. Host a screening of Kemba. It's available on BET Plus. The information is sure to be valuable, and we know it may be just what is needed to help save someone from being trafficked. Again, the resources will be available on SALinksInc.org, and we will have a resource page there. And we just urge everyone to please just get as educated as possible and share this information as much as possible. Kemba, do you have any other closing words before we thank our audience?
Just, to all the college kids out there, I mean, like Reginald Stewart emphasized, he was the writer of the Emerge magazine that is what basically got the Black community involved in my advocacy and bringing me home. But stay focused. I mean, that homecoming season, I know it's a lot of parties and just things that, I know some folks, Freaknik video, like there's some things that, people just want to keep in the darkness. But I strongly encourage our young people just to stay safe, make sure your friends, that you have someone that knows where you are, and just stay safe out there. And I know we're all seeing, on the news, on social media, people that are just disappearing. And we always think it can't happen to us, but just please stay focused on why you're there and your academics. Make sure you hold on to your reputation. Don't do anything that's too out of hand during this time period. But most importantly, just walk in your greatness into why you're there. And also, of course, have fun, but balance it.
I love that. Walk in your greatness. I love that. So for all the young people that are with us tonight and those who will see the a rebroadcast, because we know, again, all the community leaders and of course our members are going to share this. So we absolutely want to be sure you all hear that message clearly. Walk in your greatness, walk in your purpose and in your greatness, for sure. So we want to thank everyone on behalf of Mrs. Vanessa Falls, our Southern Area Program team. We do have our Southern Area Program Coordinator that is on, Dr. Prasharon Dixon. And we are going to hear from Dr. Ebony Lumumba now on our call to action. Dr. Lumumba.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. I hope that each of you heard something tonight that you will share and that has empowered you to join the fight against human trafficking. And join me in thanking Kemba for her bravery, her story, her truth, and her wisdom. To that end, we want to give you some actionable items to walk away from this session with so that you can join in the fight to prevent human trafficking. First, as we mentioned, we encourage you to host a screening of Kemba. It's streaming on BET+. And as you do this, don't only host the screening, but use the talkback guide to encourage conversation, to answer questions, and dispel myths around this tragic phenomenon. We also encourage you to visit the Polaris site and consider getting certified to be an advocate against human trafficking and share those credentials out in your network and community. Lastly, we hope that you will engage youth groups with this information and help us to arm our young people with the knowledge that they need to protect themselves and their friends. Include HBCU mentees, students, family members, as well as those younger individuals, high school and middle school age, about the tragic terrors of this dynamic. We hope that we have given you information tonight that you will take into the community and that we will all be armed in this fight to prevent human trafficking. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Kimberly Lamont.
Well, let me jump in here, Dr. Lumumba, and thank you for helping inspire action around this important issue. We now want to turn our attention to tonight's audience. We certainly hope you found this information valuable, and so we'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to complete a short survey by scanning the QR code on the screen. I believe we may also be dropping a link in the chat. Know that your feedback is vital to ensure our town halls and sessions such as this continue to be impactful and relevant. Thank you again. And now to help wrap up tonight's conversation, I'll pass the virtual mic back to Dr. Lamont.
Well, thank you so very much for that, Ms. Farabee. And again, we want to encourage everyone to please utilize the evaluation tool. We want your honest feedback because, of course, we want to make sure that you receive the information that you wanted to receive from tonight. And we want to know how we can improve for future programs like this. So please be sure to complete that evaluation. Again, visit salinksinc.org. We are going to have all of the resources tonight and some additional ones. We have some additional resources from the Department of Homeland Security and various resources available for you all to utilize in the local community. Here also is a slide with some QR codes to the talkback guide that Ms. Farabee, thank you so much, Ms. Farabee, because she said we did this. No, she did the talkback guide. Thank you so very much for that, and some additional human trafficking resources. Again, please, I know many of you are on some devices right now. If you can, please take a screenshot so you can have the contact information from our speakers, our dynamic speakers that we had tonight. And again, I want to thank them, and I want to thank our audience. Again, on behalf of the Southern Area of the Links Incorporated, our area director, Mrs. Vanessa Falls, our program coordinator, Dr. Dixon, and the entire program team, we thank you for your time. We hope you found it to be useful and valuable, and we look forward to hosting you again on future programs. Thank you so very much. Good night, everyone.